May Jesus and Mary be loved by all hearts. As you know, I've been covering Marian apparitions for several years. My spiritual director asked me to begin with the approved ones, of course, and now I can move on to the credible ones. Garabandal has been on my list for quite some time. I learned of it right away when I was a child. Catholic adults in my parish were passing around amazing photos of the children in ecstasy. It seemed quite obvious to all of us that this was supernatural and not demonic. In Carmel, the father of one of our nuns went to medical school in Madrid and had the opportunity to travel personally to Garabandal several times. He returned home to Minnesota to raise a large family, and he kept up his great interest in the apparition, helping to translate some of the articles for the American Garabandal Journal, which is still in existence. You can order copies. He made sure that his Carmelite daughter's monastery received regular issues of that beautiful magazine, which I always enjoyed. However, it takes me many hours to prepare a single video talk because I want to be accurate and also to add some interesting information on these apparitions that perhaps others haven't noticed. The Garabandal is an overload of information scattered on old video footage and many interviews of the visionaries. I kept moving it to the back burner because I knew it was going to involve weeks of preparation, and I didn't really have access to a lot of resources. But thankfully, Our Lady of Garabandal has sent me Cathy Miller to help me delve into for you this wonderful visit of the Blessed Mother to a small village high up in the mountains in Spain. I can't believe we're starting finally on the Feast of the Visitation, because this apparition began on the Feast of the Visitation, which in those days was July 2nd, and it started in 1961. So Cathy, tell us a little about yourself and why you became so very interested in Garabandal.
Well, I received a flyer in the mail from that very same Garabandal magazine, and it covered the basics about the apparitions. Probably I got it in 2006, and it just resonated with me. I grew up in the mountains, in a remote area where there was snow and cold, where there was cattle, where there was haying, same as the town of Garabandal. And I started studying Spanish in 7th grade all the way through, actually I minored in it in college and spent some time with a family in Mexico. And we traveled a lot in Mexico, so I just completely connected with the apparition. And the fact that the warning and the miracle were probably going to be happening in my lifetime really piqued my interest. And in studying the warning, I especially thought that there needed to be something done to try to prepare people to both live the messages, change their lives, and then to plan for the warning, and especially afterwards, because it'll be such a great opportunity for evangelization.
And that's how she lured me into her home here in rural Oklahoma, and how you lured 19 amazing speakers to put on this conference inspired by Garabandal. She always had the dream to do the conference, but felt she needed a website or something to help promote it. And she discovered me because I did one video on the warning, and she just tracked me down and said, this has to happen. And it did. And so, how did we met online?
I found your video, just like you said,
okay,
and reached out to you asking, well, why haven't you done anything on Garabandal? You've done all these other apparitions. And we ended up talking. You were in Wichita. I was actually in Mexico at the time. And we decided that we would work on a video. So I started working on the draft of a script and came home and was literally a day from leaving for Wichita to get together with you when the COVID shutdown happened. And so I didn't come up there, but instead you came down here. I had found somewhere that we could go over Easter for the Triduum and actually get to have communion, which you had not had the Eucharist.
No, I think it was like the Feast of St. Joseph Day in 2020, right?
Right.
2020. Mm-hmm. And she was kind of the sacristan. She helped a lot at the parish, and he said, the bishop said a few people could come to the Holy Week, and she got my name on the ticket, and I said, okay, I'm coming for Holy Week. And so that's when we really brainstormed together.
We did. We never did the video, though. Instead, we went straight to the conference and put together that whole conference in less than 6 months.
Now,
And
Cathy's done other conferences, and she kept telling me, oh, this will take a year and a half. It'll take forever. But it turned out everything was shut down. And when we tried to make reservations, people were dying to have somebody come and sign up. So everything was open for us, wasn't it?
It was Our Lady looking out for us. So the conference was actually called the Spiritual First Responders, or something of that nature, but Spiritual First Responder after, and we called it the Illumination of Conscience because a lot of people had never heard of the warning by then, but Illumination of Conscience was something more familiar.
So there is much, much more to Garabandal than the warning and the miracle. It's extremely rich in lessons to enhance our devotional life. So Cathy will be helping me to do a mini-series on various aspects of this apparition. Cathy, please begin this little interview. Where is it and when were the apparitions?
So Garabandal, it's actually San Sebastián de Garabandal, is in Spain, in the north of Spain, actually not that far as a crow flies from the sea, but it's up in the mountains. And they're very steep. The elevation, it's maybe 3,000 feet. It's not easy to get there at all. You have to fly into Santander, and then it's a pretty, couple-hour bus ride from there. In the area, mostly ranching, farming. The people in this particular town were very poor, but also very religious. And the apparition started in 1961 and went through 1965, roughly coinciding with Vatican II, and even taking a break at basically the same time that the council was suspended.
See, there's all sorts of tidbits in this apparition that we want to unpack. Well, I thought you said it's a crow flies from the ocean, but I think it's really close to Lourdes too. Because
it is.
The Pyrenees, where Bernadette was, it was southern France in the mountains there. So, but of course it was a world away, different language, different dialects. So tell us, who were the visionaries and how many times did they see Our Lady?
Conchita Gonzalez was the primary visionary, and then there were 3 other girls, also 12. One girl was 11 years old, Mari Loli, Jacinta, and Mari Cruz, and they were not well educated because they ended up having to work. So, school couldn't be the primary focus parts of the year when they were doing the harvest. They were normal girls, happy girls, a little bit mischievous. And Our Lady appeared to them and estimated over 2,000 times. The numbers got too big for anybody to count.
It's just unreal. So now you know why it's taken me so long to even attempt this apparition. Now, Pope Benedict, not very many years ago, gave formal approval to Laos in France, which the French bishops had hesitated for centuries to approve that one because there were so many apparitions that went on for years. And so now we have a Vatican precedent official for large apparition sites. So that includes Medjugorje, very famous now. But at Medjugorje, Mary gives a daily message to be passed to the public, whereas the girls at Garabandal only received a couple of formal messages. Is that right?
Right. They did 2 formal messages, which I'll read in a second, and a couple of informal ones, and then information that they were to keep to themselves. And that had to do specifically really with dates about when the 4 big prophesied events of Garabandal would come. And actually people refer to them more as 3, but I think it's important to say 4 because a tribulation is supposed to happen before the warning, the miracle, and the conditional chastisement. But the messages started, actually the first one was the very first year, and it says, "We must make many sacrifices, perform much penance, and visit the Blessed Sacrament frequently. But first we must lead good lives. If we do not, a great chastisement will befall us. The cup is already filling up, and if we do not change, a very great chastisement will come upon us." That was followed after lots of apparitions by the second message, and that message happened in 1965, and it referred back to the first one, and it said, "As my message of October 18th has not been complied with and has not been made known to the world, I'm advising you that this is the last one. Before the cup was filling up, now it is flowing over. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Eucharist. You should turn the wrath of God away from yourselves by your efforts. If you ask his forgiveness with sincere hearts, he will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of Saint Michael the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. You are now receiving the last warnings. I love you very much, and I do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity, and we will grant your requests. You should make more sacrifices. Think about the passion of Jesus.
Now, for those of you who watch my Marian channel, I've covered many apparitions, and Mary has always asked for conversion, except once at Pont, Maine, where that village was so devout. She was there to console them rather than ask for conversion. But just the tone of this one, it reminds me more of Fatima and Akita. It's really more urgent, and it calls account of the clergy and the call for seriously. And I think all the ecstasies were the other things. I mean, there weren't all these messages that they were supposed to publicly. The people were witnessing these children. They would fall into ecstasy sometimes several times a day, just walking around the village. And sometimes it would be a couple girls here and then another girl there. It was almost chaotic, and it was night and day. And but I think they were given. I think those ecstasies that went on were just to give importance to these main ones, this call for conversion, and that chastisement and was on the way. Seriously, it was getting time. And so, and this also assured us that even though it was a scary time to live in, if we have to go through a chastisement, we do have our mother. And she was so sweet to the girls. And but it wasn't only Mary who visited the village. What other persons did the girls see in vision?
Well, the first apparition was actually of Saint Michael. And he came often. He would later bring communion to the girls. He actually delivered the second message because Our Lady said that message hurt her too much to deliver herself. So he came. The infant Jesus came often with Mary, and she would let the girls hold him, which they said it was very weird kind of feeling because it's not like he weighed anything. It wasn't like we hold someone here on earth. It was a completely different feeling, but that it was a closeness. They knew there was something there. So he would come, and then he never said anything. And then Jesus appeared as a Sacred Heart one time to Jacinta, did not say anything. And Father Luis Andrew, who was actually ended up being the fifth visionary for one particular apparition. And those were the other ones that appeared.
So we'll be talking about all of this later. Okay, I can't wait for a future video to expound with you, Cathy, why Our Lady of Mount Carmel is part of Our Lady's title at Garabandal. So what happened on Mount Carmel that made it so famous in the Bible? Think about that. The Israelites were in schism. They had two temples, both worshiping Yahweh. Elijah called for a showdown on that mountain. God manifested his presence. It was like an illumination of conscience for all those people. Sadly, few converted, and Israel went through the chastisement. The nation was overcome by Babylon, and the temple of Yahweh was burned to the ground. So that might be the secret message at Garabandal, to let us know that things are getting very serious here.
I'm not sure what most people reflect on, but they probably imagine that Our Lady is just urging people to wear the scapular. We need a Carmelite to expound on this aspect.
Amen. There's a great many aspects in this very rich apparition, and Cathy here is our expert, much more than myself. So tell us, Cathy, are there any priests involved in this Garabandal?
Lots and lots of priests. This apparition was focused on priests and the Eucharist, as you could tell in the formal messages. Our Lady told the girls that priests were the ones she most wanted to be there. And boy, did they show up. Priests hiding in plain clothes, which were almost always outed by the Virgin, by the way. Priests from all over the world, priests who studied the girls in ecstasy, interviewed and observed, and priests who wrote books. A family of 5 priests, the Andrew family, just mentioned the one son, one of the brothers, who actually was a part of the visions. So one of the most fascinating events of Garabandal actually happened with him. So he got when he was in ecstasy along with the girls, he was able to see the prophesied miracle. And he cried out, "Miracle, miracle, miracle." And he was so full of joy that when he left, which was later that same time, I think that one might have been in the evening, and he was in the car with friends on the way home, and he simply died of joy. There was no physical reason. He had no issues. He was a young man.
I thought there was a car crash.
No.
I was
No,
wrong on that. Okay.
he was speaking to them, telling about what a wonderful mother we have in heaven and how great it was and the miracle. And then all of a sudden he quit talking, and they turned around and there he was, slumped. And so that was obviously a very important story. And in the last few years, actually, to bring it full circle, a Spanish priest, Father Jose Luis Saavedra, has completed a doctoral thesis and written a book, which was then used in the production of 2 movies, Garabandal, Only God Knows, and Garabandal, Unstoppable Waterfall. So priest involvement has continued into the modern day.
That's so amazing. And we're just touching on things here. Despite the presence of clergy and many credible witnesses, Cathy has shared with me 2 important reasons that have caused delay in church approval. Was I wrong in assuming, Cathy, that the bishops didn't like the message, that many cardinals, priests, and bishops were on the road to perdition and taking souls with them? Was that an underlying factor for the suppression, that none of them are easy to admit?
Well, I don't know, sister. It certainly could be, but the reasons that are talked about have to do with the fact that 2 reasons, basically, of why these apparitions might not be approved or have been approved. One is that there were apparitions in Ezquioga, Spain, about 30 years before the Garabandal ones. And after the initial vision of Mary weeping there in Ezquioga, it was seen by 200 children, or by 2 children, and then hundreds of people reported visions of the Blessed Mother, sometimes bearing a sword along with angels wielding bloody swords. Well, at the same time, the Basque nationalists were kind of saber-rattling, and they used these visions for political purposes, promoting the image of Our Lady wielding a sword. So that didn't set very well, as you can imagine, with bishops. And what happened was, fast forward 30 years, at the same time as the apparitions were starting in Garabandal, a Basque separatist group known as ETA launched its first attack. So it's very understandable that those early bishops were extremely nervous and probably just wanted Garabandal to go away. But Conchita was actually summoned to Rome twice for interrogation, once in 1966 and once in 1967. She actually gave the date of the great miracle to the Pope's secretary and to another cardinal. So once that was done, why would the church fully recognize the apparitions as worthy of belief before the date given comes to pass?
That's why Cathy is so valuable, because I've read stuff all my life about Garabandal, but I didn't realize that this political thing was going on, or this Basque apparitions. And I think really the Basque apparitions, I looked at Ezquioga, it seemed like the first week it was genuine, and then the devil gets in. And at Lourdes, within a few years, 50 other girls were seeing something in caves after Bernadette, and they were seeing something. So Satan just does that to mess with us. And so I believe that there was some concern for these bishops about what was going on with Garabandal, which was very extraordinary. So now, like Medjugorje, which hasn't been approved yet either, the church encourages pilgrimages because prayer is always a good thing. And ultimately, it's the fruits of an apparition that help the church make a decision. And Cathy, you actually went to Garabandal. Was it worth your time and trouble to make that trek?
Absolutely, sister. It actually made me believe even more. I was there about 11 or 12 days. It was a pilgrimage with Maria Sirocco, who had been there at the time of some of the apparitions. And I had read, I don't know how many books I have, 20 books maybe, and subscribed to the Garabandal magazine. And so when I found the village the way that it was in the books, the way I'd read about it, and the village really had not changed much other than pavement, cars, and running water and electricity, it still looked a lot the same as in the books, and they were still herding cattle right down the middle of the little town. I was able to talk with the sister of Mariloli, with the aunt of Conchita, and then all of the pilgrims, and there's many pilgrims who come every year. Pilgrims have started actually buying houses and apartments. There has been a couple different apartment buildings built. And so you interact with those people who believed for so long, and it's hard not to become a Garabandalista yourself.
And there's, she said there's Australians there, people from Great Britain. So it's not just you have to know Spanish. They've got an American pilgrimage center there too, right? So she can navigate a little in Spanish for sure, but we don't have to know Spanish. So if you feel called to go there, go there. So give our viewers, Cathy, some highlights of the themes that we'll be talking about in future videos.
Well, we definitely want to hit on the rosary and other prayers taught to the visionaries. Our Lady spent a lot of time. Actually, the girls pretty much prayed the rosary almost every apparition.
Slowly,
very slowly. We also want to cover resources available, the books and videos and things that are available online. And then the Night of Screams, which was some terrifying nights, and we'll dive into that deeper. We'll also cover little miracles, many of them involving the thousands of religious items that the girls held up for Our Lady to kiss. Of course, the connection to Vatican II. And then why the skepticism about Garabandal?
Besides that, I mean, the girls mentioned communism, and at the end, it's very few people know this, but Conchita confided to a German reporter that Our Lady had said something that she didn't even know the word for abortion, but it disturbed her so much she wasn't talking about it very much. So there's all sorts of things to unpack in this that Our Lady said, and just the lessons of virtue that she was teaching these young girls. She was instructing them in their spiritual life, and we can certainly learn from that too. Now, have any prophecies come true so far?
Oh yes, lots of them. Some of the bigger ones, though, were Our Lady told the girls, "A time will come when all four of you will contradict yourselves about the visions. You will doubt and even deny them. In this way, you will establish among yourselves the same confusion that now exists in the church."
End quote. She really said that.
She did, and by mid-January 1963, only really halfway through the apparitions, 3 of the visionaries began doubting. And then Conchita herself, the main visionary who had the most, had deep doubts starting in August of 1960. Our Lady foretold of the completion of the council after Pope John the 23rd died, and she said that the Pope would go to the Holy Land, as Paul VI did. She also said that one Pope would have a very short reign, and so did John Paul I, one of the shortest, if not the shortest.
Are you keeping track of all this? There's just so much. And so tell us who are or were the well-known believers in Garabandal.
Well, St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, she and Conchita became very good friends in 1970. And I was told that she was actually the godmother of one of Conchita's children. She visited Conchita a lot. And she invited Jacinta to her novitiate in Tijuana. Jacinta was living in California at the time, and she introduced her to all the novices. Here is Jacinta of Garabandal. Garabandal is true. And Mother Teresa also met Mariloli. She was in and out of New York a lot. And then we have St. Padre Pio.
Yes.
He affirmed people who came to visit him's plans to visit, or if they said, "Father, should I go to Garabandal?" he would tell them yes. He told them how long the Blessed Virgin Mary had been appearing there. And he even instructed a man to consecrate himself to the Virgin of Carmel, who appeared at Garabandal. He also corresponded with Conchita, and he left instructions that after his death and funeral, the face veil that was used on his face would be sent to her, and it was. And then St. Mother Maravillas, she told her Carmelite nuns that the happenings of Garabandal are from God.
That's a lot. Testimony from saints. And what about popes?
Well, St. Paul VI told Conchita, "I bless you, and with me the whole church blesses you." He and St. John Paul II encouraged the spread of the message of Garabandal. And after receiving a copy of Albrecht Weber's book on Garabandal, The Finger of God, JP2 handwrote a note back, giving his blessing and encouragement to Albrecht Weber.
She's just a wealth of information, of little things, big things, and little things. Now, there's currently a renewed interest. The baton is being passed, and a second generation or third is taking over and promoting this event that goes back to the 1960s. So we've got, for years and years and years, I don't know how many years, Barry Hanratty was the editor-in-chief of the Garabandal Journal, which came out so regularly with such beautiful photography and articles, and Joey Lomangino, who we talked about already in another one. And then I just learned about Dr. Brian Miller, and he's the one that translated the entire Bible of Garabandal. She went in haste to the mountains, and he was a family doctor in Ohio, but he learned Spanish and went over there. I think he learned some other languages. He was just a brilliant man, and he helped establish a trust fund, and he was on hand with his camera for many of those apparitions, so a lot of those footage are from him. So these people have made sure that they've got people after them to carry on the thing. So Barry has a new editor, right? Dick Codet, and this, I just talked to the new president. Brian Miller just passed a few years ago, and his brother Keith, and they've got a new board of trustees that's carrying on this website. But they gave me permission to upload a lot of their stuff on mine too, because they just want it out there. So,
sister, you're going to be the next one. Now your website is going to be the next place for missionary work for the messages of Garabandal.
Yes, and I'm so grateful for my sojourn here in Oklahoma, where I could stay as a guest of Cathy to delve into this. And soon I'll be going to join friends who are waiting me in Wisconsin. Cathy might make a trip up north to continue our talks, because we want to do this series. We've got plans for it now. We've outlined it. We've got our material lined up. And we may have to do it remotely, or she'll come up there. One way or another, we're going to keep this discussion going, because the warning will happen soon. And Our Lady of Garabandal can help us all become spiritually prepared.
I'll miss Sister very much.
Oh, me too.
She spread out 3 of her 5 computers on my big table. She has been scanning all sorts of material and has been upgrading the House of Mary OMD.org website so that she can upload all of these many resources for you. Be sure and visit regularly to check out new items, or like me, subscribe, and then she'll send you an occasional newsletter to let you know what's new.
Thank you for listening to the Blessed Mother.
May Jesus and Mary be loved by all hearts.